It's now for each deputy. Deputy Maureen O'Sullivan next.
Can Corla. Tá an ino orm an maid Aragont an maid Cosboid an Frasura Gulair etoig binch leis an gano príváideach seo. Tá an ráiteas san gano príváideach an siimplí, níla gceist ach ceist a chur. And the notion is a very simple one in very plain, non-threatening language. And it's about putting a question. It's about a lobby. It's about asking for an exemption. And it's not using the language of assertion, and it's not using the language of aggression. It's not threatening. It's not demanding. It's a very simple request to look for something that, if granted, will be of enormous benefit to this country and the people of Ireland. So it's very hard to understand the opposition to a simple request. And the naive side of me wonders and hopes that the reason for the government amendment is because they are already in negotiations on this particular request. But the realistic side of me looks at the language in the government amendment, and I read things like it's fairer and more sustainable arrangement, the best outcome, the best course of action. And the part of the amendment that says not making payments raises the possibility of refusing to make. And I think the language of that amendment is really missing the whole point of the motion. It's making something of it that it's actually not. And there's a comment also about our European partners, but the term partners, in my view, suggests equality. There's an equality between the people, but what we have is a very hard taskmaster, the master of domination, who's stifling our economy. Now, the promissory notes have become sovereign bonds, and it's difficult to understand why people thought a change of name actually meant a change, that the Minister of Finance had actually made a magic wand, and promissory notes, something odious, had become something magical, sovereign bonds, but that's not the case. And I'm reminded when Juliet asked, well, what's in a name? A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Well, promissory notes, sovereign bonds mean the exact same, and they certainly are not smelling sweetly as roses do. So no, we know what we're talking about. The billions that have been paid to date. We have the 25 billion outstanding. The central bank now will sell that 25 billion worth of bonds and then destroy the 25 billion. And then over the next 40 years, when the interest is included, we're going to be paying a total of 72 billion to repay those billions which were originally used to bail out two insolvent banks. So apart from the injustice of it, it's just absolutely ludicrous that we borrow billions in order to burn billions. And we look at the areas where the finances are really necessary. We look at the health services, distressed mortgages, unemployment, immigration, homelessness and housing. And I note the 15 million that's going to Dublin, or that's going to local authorities for the voids. I mean, Dublin City Council could do with the full 15 million at the moment, and I don't think they'd still have enough to cover the needs, the housing needs that are just in that particular area alone. I'm all for paying my just debts and for Ireland to pay her just debts, but Ireland is paying for the incompetence and the negligence of European institutions in relation to the euro. This is crippling the economy and it's inhibiting real growth, and it's not our debt. There was a blow to democracy yesterday in the judgment that was handed down in the High Court on Deputy Collins' challenge, and it seemed to hinge on Article 17 of the Constitution, which requires, quote, the purpose of the appropriation shall have been recommended to the Dáil by a message from the government signed by the Taoiseach. That's not my view of parliamentary democracy. It's certainly making a farce of everybody here and what we're doing here. So I think it's something the Constitutional Convention to look at. But tonight's motion is a tribute to democracy and to the democratic will of the people, particularly as exercised by the Ballyhea Group, and we have to acknowledge their perseverance and their tenacity in order to try and do right by their country, and the way in which they're not going to accept the damage that has been done. And finally, an interesting comment from Pope Francis, and I just quote the beginning of it: as long as the problems of the poor are not radically resolved by rejecting the absolute autonomy of markets and financial speculation, and by attacking the structural causes of inequality, no solution will be found for the world's problems, or for any problem for that matter.